Uh, Before people leave, and they usually leave in this class, I just have an announcement to make. Um, the Thursday night class, Jennifer taught the other day, and it was really very successful. I got a very wonderful response from people about her teaching. So she's going to continue teaching the Thursday night class. That's the one that's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 4:30 in the afternoon on the West Coast, and something like 2 o'clock in the morning in Israel. So, the rest of the classes I will teach, and hopefully, if this works out, I will start having other people teach, not the classes I teach, but we'll set up new classes during the week, for people to really develop their practice and learn how to really teach a sizable group of people this meditation. Does anyone else have a question? Or does anyone have a question?
Stuart, I have a question. This is Tom. Um, Even though I can't hear very well, I pick up much of what you say, and sometimes it registers a day later, sometimes a week later, sometimes years later. And I remember many years ago, you spoke about how Rudy would work with you, where when you brought the energy to the top of your head, then he would give you more energy and you would bring that around. And at the time, the craft seemed too impersonal to me. I was so tied up in my own suffering. And now I see beyond personal, it's not always bad. Could you talk a little about how he worked with you to get you to bring the energy around?
Well, I can tell you very simply, I made myself available to Rudy. He was my teacher. I knew he gave me my life. I had never found a meditation that worked as deeply and as profoundly to change me. And I mean, yeah, probably 3 times, 4 times a week, I used to go to his gallery and sit there and meditate with him. I lived in his house. When I lived in his house, after every meditation class and before dinner, we would have like a hands-on meditation session that Rudy worked with me, and there were other people living in the house. I made myself available. I knew what I needed, and I was going to get it because I had never met anyone who had taught anything as profoundly to me that like Rudy taught. And I wasn't going to take it for granted. And I might never meet a person like this again in my life. And I never have met a person like this again in my life. But in those 6 years, I saw this amazing transition take place in myself. And I really said, Stuart, you got to be there. I mean, he said, I'll never forget. He said to me, I walked in his gal, Stuart, I want to go to the Middle East. I would like to take you with me. Are your bags packed? I mean, who the hell ever thought about going to the Middle East? I was living in New York. I was studying with my teacher. I was working at an apartment. And I said, Rudy, tell me when you want to go. I will go. I need to be with you and to learn from you, whatever it is you have to teach me. That's how that energy worked. It was his willingness to do this and my willingness to say, okay, I've got to grow. And I need somebody who can do this for me. Now, life has changed, and all of you. I mean, I don't think anybody here lives in Stamford, Connecticut, besides Jennifer and myself. But I'm available. I've had people come up. I do private classes with them. Not a lot. I used to do more, and I'm available to do this kind of thing with people. People have to take advantage of it. One of the problems with this Zoom thing is that everybody's too comfortable living in their house. You don't have to go anywhere to do it, you know, and it's really a situation because it doesn't mean that somebody has to do something beyond themselves in order to receive the energy. I had to do something beyond myself. I remember after Muktananda was in America, there were all these people that were staying at Rudy's house, and they were all going to go home. And I was sitting in his gallery with him one day, and I said, Rudy, do you think it might be possible for me to move into your house, into your ashram that you're running? And he looked at me with a smirk on his face. And I'll never forget, Michael Austin was sitting behind him, and he said, Michael, Stuart wants to move in the house. He had a smirk on his face. And then he looked at me again. He said, of course, you have to. He said, of course, you have to come here and get your training. I did. And it was very costly because at first I'm living in a 2,000 square foot space full of, museum quality Asian art. It was fantastic. I was sleeping, beneath a lamo, and the thing was like 6 feet high with a horse. And I mean, it was unbelievable. And that lasted for about a month and a half. And then all of a sudden there were 15 people living there. And I didn't even know where I was going to sleep at night. And I had to come to a decision. Do you want to know where you're going to sleep at night? Or do you want to get your training from Rudy? And the decision was it didn't matter where I slept at night. I wanted to get my training from Rudy. That's how it works. And I'll never forget, like a month later, he came up to me and said, Stuart, he said, look, when I go to India, when I go to other ashrams, when I leave New York City, I'm giving you the key to my apartment. You can stay there. And, you never know how karma works. You never know. But you have to trust God and you have to understand what it has to cost you in order to get a spiritual life. That's how Rudy did this with me. I was there to make it happen. And he put me through the grinder. Everything from taking my teaching away from me, you know, he used to leave and I would teach, to making me go to college, which was the last thing in the world I ever wanted to do, et cetera, until it finally, the flower began to bloom. I'll never forget when he told me, I want you to go get a master's degree. And I looked at him, I said, in what? In Kundalini yoga? In what? So he said, I don't give a shit. In whatever you want to study, get a master's degree. I remember I went back to his meditation center. I sat down in the meditation room and Nityananda came out of my heart and said, Stuart, if you get a master's degree and listen to Rudy, he will be responsible for giving you everything he's ever learned in this practice. And then he said to me, and what's the big deal? You're no longer teaching. It's the first time you can grow organically. It's not your ego's wish that you're teaching now. I mean, 20 minutes later, I went back to Rudy and I gave him a big hug and said, thanks. Thanks. Took everything away from me. And his response was, I didn't think you'd get it this quickly. You know, that's how you get your spiritual life. It's got to cost you something. That's how you get the teacher to work with you in that kind of depth. Now, I know the world is different today, and the way I teach is different. I'm not running an ashram anymore. I'm not running center in New York where I had 100 people studying with me. I'm running Zoom, and I know people are here from Israel, from Brazil, from all over America. It's a different thing. But somehow people have to find a way to take advantage of what is being given to them and never take it for granted. So you ask how I got what I got. That's how I got it.
When, Stuart, when I was crawling on my belly under the White House in Texas to do wiring,
Yeah, Tom,
I didn't. I didn't hear some of the clues you were giving because I was so wrapped up in myself.
Well,
And now I hear things that you said many years ago.
I used
I'm
to talk
grateful.
about this years ago, and and nobody listens. Everybody, like you, is so wrapped up in all their bullshit that they don't hear what God is giving them. And I'm not saying I'm God, but it comes through me. It came through Rudy. And I was blessed. I listened, and I did whatever I could do to get those teachings, including moving to Denton, Texas. You think I ever wanted to live in Denton, Texas? For God's sake, before I lived in Denton, I lived in Paris for off and on for 5 years. I lived in Italy. I lived in Morocco. I lived in London, in Berlin, not in Berlin, but in Germany. I lived all over the world. And then he said, I want you to go to Denton, Texas, spend 3 weeks. And then he came down there, and I said, Rudy, it's been a hell of a 3 weeks. Well, 6 months later, he said, you're on your fourth day. And I understood how the world was created in 7 days. Time is irrelevant until you finish the cycle and you get what you're in a place to get. You understand? You have to fulfill the cycle. It took me 9 years to complete 3 weeks. And once that house was built, and I'll never forget when I saw Bob Baker putting that stupa on top of the house. There was a crane, and I said, you've done your job, Stuart. I said, now you have to figure out, not figure out, but you have to open to leave, because if you don't go back to New York, you will crystallize here. You will never grow. You have done whatever you can do here. And I gave it up. I left. I knew I needed to move on, start it all over again. And I had guides along the way. Kala Rinpoche told me, if you move back to New York, your teachings, you didn't even know what I taught, will be known all over the world. This is what he told me when I was in India at his lamasery. Didn't even know what I taught, but he told me that. And I think it was 6 or 8 months later, I moved back to New York. And 2 years later, I was teaching on 4 continents. He was right. I needed that to grow. And it didn't matter if I gave up that wonderful house and a candy business and a bakery and all the stuff that was going on there.
You you gave up a lot, Stuart. You could have taken all the money from that and gone to New York, and you left so much.
Well, I left that ashram. I mean, that house, you know what, that house? You think that
Yeah.
house never got built if I wasn't there? And they have now that I never even existed. Somebody wrote in some guidebook, Stuart Perrin, was so afraid to continue living in Denton that he left. He ran away from the place. Somebody wrote this in a guidebook of Denton, Texas.
I didn't quite hear. Yeah. Sorry.
Anyway, what I'm saying is it has to cost you something to grow in life. And if you're not willing to pay some kind of, forget about it. What's there is reincarnation, next incarnation. God forbid you should become some monk living in a monastery in your next incarnation. You know, a very good question, Tom, and a very important thing, not only for you, but for everybody. I mean, most people, Rudy told me he was going to live to 84 years old. That's what he told me. He told me a number of times that. He was 45 when he left. In the last year of his life, he burned up his karma. He worked so hard and transformed himself. I mean, I flew back from Texas. I'll never forget, he met me at the airport. And I didn't even recognize him. His head had, it was extraordinary, the growth that had taken place in him. Burned up his coma in 1 year, 40 years of coma. So you never know what's going to happen in 10 minutes. You have to take advantage of life and what life presents to you. And each person has to figure it out in their own way how to do it. I can't tell any of you how to do it. You have to figure it out. I hope it's clear. I don't want to feel like I'm lecturing people. I'm just telling you about my own experience, and what I've been through in my life and how this all evolved. And I do what I do today. And frankly, I would much rather have a center somewhere, but I can't afford to do it in New York anymore. When I was 50 years old, 40, I was able to run a business and get hugely successful, and I could run a place in there. Now, I'm not a kid anymore. So I just do what I do. And I'm here. I had a class last night here. We had, I think, 6 people came. I told them that I'd be willing to do this every Saturday if people come, if they make a commitment to be there. If they don't commit to be there, I won't do it. I'm not going to do it if one person shows up. Nobody shows up. I got to sit and wait for people and nobody shows up. Does anyone else have a question?
Thank you, Stuart.
You're welcome, Tom. Tom, you were a character in Denton, Texas. You weren't an easy guy. I hope you know that. You're a much easier person now. You're much easier to connect with. There's more joy in you. There's more openness in you. You were pretty whacked out down there. I mean, you worked hard, and I'll never forget that, Tom. And I've always been grateful to you how hard you used to work there. But you were not easy to deal with. Much easier now. Does anyone else have a question? I'm having a retreat for my birthday here, and I think 13 people have signed up. There's still room for like 7 or 8 people to come, but it's been 13 people now for the last month. So I'm wondering, people don't have time, they don't want to come, it's the money, there's always some excuse. Instead of growing up and say, okay, I'll do this. I'll find out a way to do this.
Stuart, when is your birthday?
Okay.
Hello?
When is your birthday?
My birthday is August 10th.
August 10th.
That weekend, I'm having a retreat.
Okay. I begin to job on 13 August.
Listen, I don't know who's talking there, but please.
Flora is talking.
Yeah, I know, but somebody else is talking also.
Oh, sorry. My voice. I'm beginning to work on 13 August.
I don't understand you. You got to speak to me in Norwegian.
Jeg begynner å jobbe 13. august. It was Norwegian.
Yeah. Good to see you.
It's not time for me to come on 8 August.
Right. Well, I have a retreat every 2 months, so maybe you may come.
Okay, I will talk to them. I will find out.
Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? Look, I'm like a pussycat now. I used to be tough. I mean, Tom can tell you I wasn't an easy person either in that Texas. And I've mellowed out an awful lot since then, and have a lot of room for people that truly, show me that their need to have a spiritual life is real and deep. I don't know who's talking there, but please,
N'hade pas que studia på Nina Park.
Laura, please mute.
Mute option from the circle.
does anyone else have a question they would like to? Okay, thank you. Bless you. There'll be class Tuesday. There'll be another one tomorrow evening. And I'm looking forward to seeing you. Bless you. I hope what I talked about today makes sense to you. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.